Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show for Wednesday, April 2nd, 19. Let's get into the proper century. 2025. This is the A block, which means we start a little bit after 7 o'clock. That is John Combest on the other side of the studio. John, good morning to you.
Good morning, Brad.
We start the show off every single day by bringing this guy in.
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what does he do? He gives us the top three. The top three of what, you may ask? The top three of John Combest's extensive list of all the things you need to know that's going on in the state of Missouri. All you have to do is you go to his website, johncombest.com, C-O-M-B-E-S-T, and you'll see dozens of items there. But what we do is we started off with this thing.
Now on with the countdown.
And we start off with...
In third place...
a news outlet that we don't hear from that often as it relates to Missouri politics and policy, but they did a deep dive on a very special topic to a lot of our listeners, and that is the Ford F-150. The highlight and the headline from FarmJournal yesterday, Missouri farmer calls Ford out for abandoning ethanol flex fuel in new F-150 trucks. Unless I'm mistaken, Brad, you have talked about the topic of Ford being among the companies that are moving away from fossil fuels or even ethanol and moving to all electric. You've mentioned that on the show before, right, Brad?
Well, Ford's had sort of stumble on that. Matter of fact, the Ford F-150, the Lightning version, has been a dismal failure. They've had all sorts of problems with that, and I don't think they're selling too many of them anymore. I don't think they're making too many of them anymore. They do the Mach-E, which is the stretch version of the Mustang, which also I don't think is done very well. They're reevaluating where they're at. Matter of fact, Chris Farley's cousin, who runs Ford, I said that before, and people go, that's not right. Yes, Chris Farley, the comedian from Saturday Night Live, his cousin, or some nephew or something like that, runs Ford. They're taking a long, hard look at electric vehicles because at one point in time they were talking about the fact with the Ford Lightnings they were losing $50,000 per truck. So I don't know.
You can't operate a business like that, Brad. You know that.
Not too long.
This gentleman, his name is Bradley Shad, and he's the president and CEO of the Missouri Corn Growers Association. He's looking at it from a perspective of trying to persuade Ford. He's not calling for a boycott or acting out or stomping his feet, but I'll give you a quote from him. Quote, "They stopped selling new flex fuel vehicles." And they, by the way, is Ford. They stopped selling new flex fuel vehicles, so now they don't have a single new engine platform option for growers to purchase. The F-Series truck is one of the most important vehicles that we have on the farm today. They're trying to change that series to an electric fleet, and we don't like that. Shad's whole point is, look, offer whatever options you want, but give us the opportunity to not go all the way, or give us the opportunity as customers and purchasers and fans of the F-150 to not go all electric. We want to support ethanol. We want to support energy that's produced right here in the United States. We don't want to go to all electric.
The downside to that is, what part of the problem is with the flex fuel vehicles, don't you?
What's that, Brad?
More expensive to produce because of the fact that they have to have all these special sensors, because the way the thing works, it has these sensors that detect how much ethanol is in the fuel system and run accordingly. Because I had a flex fuel vehicle, and quite honestly, I used to, at the time, pretty much the only place I could get the E85 was like at Casey's, which are sort of more in the rural areas. There was one in Washmo, one in Warrenton I used to go to from time to time. And the downside to the E85 is you get a significantly reduction in fuel economy. You're paying a little bit less for it, but whereas the vehicle I had, I would get, on gas, I would get 24, 25 miles a gallon. When I went to flex fuel, I would drop to like 18 or 19. And I don't know. I mean, and that's the problem. The problem is that they have to have all these sensors and all these additional computer programming because the engine, the computer has to recognize what fuel is going into the engine. And think about that. You're driving down the highway at 60, 70 miles an hour in John's case, 80, Shelley Barr's case, 100 miles an hour. And the computer has to say, okay, he filled up yesterday with regular gas, and today he filled up with E85. So that means essentially he has E42 in the tank today. So we have to compensate the computer. It just gets really expensive and complicated. So
I would imagine so. And Mr. Shad says that Ford is still supporting its higher ethanol compatible engines in South America. And he points out, I didn't know this. He points out that Brazil has a minimum ethanol blend in its fuel of 27.5%. So in other words, Ford makes vehicles that are tailored for the local market and the local, energy demands and what people want in those countries. But it sounds like Mr. Shad, again, instead of having a fit or a tantrum or making a big stink about it, he's saying, Ford, we hope you reconsider. We hope you consider that the fact that a lot of folks who buy F-150s are pro-ag people who really support ethanol.
Well, John, I agree with him. I mean, matter of fact, I think I've always said all along that I would rather have my money, if I'm putting, fuel in my vehicle, I'd rather have my money go toward, the local farmer than the Sheik of Arabique or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, the Sheik of Arabique he only got his job because his name happened to rhyme. And, I think we'll probably just stay on the energy topic when we roll into story number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Headline from the Post-Dispatch and the appropriately named journalist Ezra Bitterman. Senate proposal would open Missouri's energy market up to competition. Now, this is a headline that's going to stir the loins of Brad Hildebrand. It involves a state senator from St. Charles County, Senator Nick Schroer. And it involves one of your favorite topics, Brad, Ameren, utility companies, and energy competition. In short, under Senator Nick Schroer's bill, competition in the Missouri energy marketplace would be introduced. Schroer points out that this happens in other states. Pennsylvania, for example, has a website where you can go and pick and choose among what energy providers can supply you energy. You see in this piece by Mr. Bitterman quite a counterpoint from the utility industry. An accomplished gentleman named Jason Clint, who works for Evergy, points out, hey, when you take away the ability of big energy companies, reliable energy companies, to inform consumers of the energy they're getting and what they're paying for and make it very clear and very simple, you open up the market to scammers. When you just have a wild west of energy competition, you're going to have people come in and scam Missouri consumers. So this gentleman, Mr. Bitterman, goes to Jason Clint. So he goes to Evergy in the energy industry. He also goes to the Consumers Council, which is kind of mixed on Schroer's bill. The Consumers Council says, yeah, when you open up the energy market to competition, you do have people get scammed. And you need to make sure that the rules are clear and consistent. But on the other hand, the gentleman from the Consumers Council, John Kaufman, says, on the other hand, it is good to have a little bit of competition in the marketplace. So here you have Nick Schroer saying, hey, open the floodgates. And Schroer, to be fair, points out that under the legislation, the state is required to create an education campaign for Missourians about the new system and how to avoid fraud. So it looks like Schroer anticipated this argument from the energy industry and says, hey, we're going to do a ton of consumer education, and we would tell people what the risks are and what to look out for if we actually open up the energy market.
You want my opinion on this, John?
I do.
Ricky Schroeder needs to direct his efforts somewhere else because this is never going to work.
Why don't you think so, Brad?
Well, because of the fact look at what happened. Look at what happened if you're an old guy like me. Okay, once upon a time you had AT&T in our area with Southwestern Bell. Okay, and they ran a famous campaign which I loved. You're probably too young to remember this. They had a campaign that was called "We may be the only telephone company in town, but we try not to act like it." And
you mentioned that before.
Okay, and the crazy thing about that was you're drawing attention to the fact that they aren't the only telephone company in town, and they did act like it, just like Ameren UE for the most part. They're the only electric company in town for most people, and they do act like it because they just do whatever they want to do. And the problem on this is that you're going to have people who are going, and when they broke up the phone company, I'll give you a perfect example. In the old days, I had a contract to do some, this is before the internet and the whole bit, this is a long time ago. I had a contract to supply, with my traffic network company, to supply traffic information to Illinois Department of Transportation, their headquarters in Collinsville. This is after they broke up the phone company, okay? I had to contact 4 different companies to get that data line in because of the fact that when they broke up the phone company, there was one company that had the lines in Missouri, and then there was another company that had the lines that went from Missouri to Illinois, and then there's another company, the lines that had the lines in Madison County, in St. Clair County, and they couldn't get into Madison County without another company out of Springfield. I had to deal with 4 different telephone companies to get a data line into IDOT before they broke up Southwestern Bell. I would have made one phone call, it would have been done. You're going to run into the same problem. Then people are going to go, this sucks. Because the chant, and once again, you're probably too young to remember this, there were lots of people saying, put the phone company back together again. The idea being is the monopoly.
They broke up the Ma Bells, and we need to put them back together.
Right. The monopoly worked, and the competitive marketplace didn't. And the whole problem is, it's called in the electric industry, it's called T&D, transmission and distribution. How are you going to get the electric from provider A to house B when the lines are owned by company C? Get what I'm saying?
I get exactly what you're saying. I'm kind of surprised to see you in some ways defend Ameren here.
I'm not defending Ameren. Trust me, I'm not defending Ameren because I think a lot of what they do is smoke and mirrors. Same thing with Quiver River and some of the cooperatives. Oh, we're the cooperative. We're so nice. We're so easy to deal with. Balderdash. Trust me, I can tell you some stories. The problem that I have is, why is it that, and like perfect example, I mean, do you get an email from Ameren on your electric bill?
No, but I check my my daily use on the Ameren website. I can see how much energy I use every day.
Okay, have you seen their new thing where they tell you what you're using your electricity for in your house?
Yeah, and you've talked several times on the show about how inaccurate that is.
Well, but I say it's spooky as hell.
And invasive. Yeah, you talk about how invasive it is.
Because they're using AI, because every appliance or every electrical thing that is hooked up to your box in your home has a different signature to it. The way it operates, the current rate, things like that. And they have these programmed in their computers so that they see a spike hit and then it goes down. That's the compressor on your air conditioning starting. Or if you see something that's on all the time, that's like your whatever it is. Your
always on. It's categorized by Ameren as always on.
Right, that kind of
like
stuff.
Like your dishwasher.
Right. Okay. To me, that's spooky as hell. I don't want them to know what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
So what option would you have there, Brad?
You don't have an option.
Tell them to butt out?
You don't have an option. They know.
You don't have an option.
There's no option. They know. And to the point where once again, and they're trying to say, well, look at you do. The thing that's problematic to me, you don't get me going on this, John. I know too much about this, and I get boring as hell. But there was a time Ameren UE switched over to new metering system where they have their own 900 megahertz radio system, which reads your meters in the whole bit. There was a time when they switched to this new meter that they could have easily put in a Wi-Fi module in those meters so you could sit there in your house with a little app and monitor all your electric usage. But no, you have to go through them. Get what I'm saying on that?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. They want you to rely on them for that kind of information.
Right. And they want to keep you in the dark. Oh, we let you know what's going on. Okay, why?
So you think that they're intentionally keeping information from what gain do they have by keeping information from consumers?
Control. They control.
And how do they benefit from that?
Control. They increase their monopolistic. They're like the evil empire. They control. I don't want to sound like I'm.
Well, they were already a monopoly, right? So to me, and Brad, I'm just a dumb consumer over here who reads his utility bill. I like the fact that I know, for example, that after 9 p.m., if I'm going to use a bunch of energy, I should use it after 9 p.m. because I happen to be on that plan. I like the fact that every month I can get a semi-accurate breakdown, I take at face value, of here's how much I spent to heat my my water. Here's how much I spent generally on air conditioning, laundry, cooking, television, whatever. I like that fact, and I like the fact that Ameren is giving me that information now.
Well, to each their own. I say that.
And you think they're gonna use Brad Hildebrand's laundry information to do something nefarious with it?
John, I say I would be willing to bet you any money they're sharing this information with appliance manufacturers already. And to the point where the next thing is going to happen, you're going to get an email from like Samsung saying, "Hey, John, we're a partner with Ameren UE."
And that bothers you. Now, in your case, I know why it bothers you because you drive 30 miles to get $10 off a washing machine. But why would a normal person care if they get a marketing email from Samsung?
John, who are you talking to? Let me ask you this.
I ask myself that every morning when I get out of bed filled with contempt.
You're talking to a weirdo, okay? You're asking me but what you're saying is, well, the average person, that's right, the average person doesn't give a whip. They don't care. They flip the switch, the lights go on, they're happy. You know what I mean? That's the average person.
Hey, and we are not average people, and we don't have an average audience. And thanks to you, Brad, this week, we have supposedly 10 times stronger signal. We'll take that at face value. And a lot of people within the sound of our voice are going to be really interested in story number one.
The number one.
Straight from the Missouri Times, a document and a story that you wouldn't get anywhere else, certainly not anywhere else for free. The 2026 Missouri Senate Campaign Tip Sheet. You say, John, what the heck is that? The Missouri Times, specifically Scott Vaughn, Jake Croson, Kelton Turner, they go through and they break down every state Senate race. Here's what's important about folks within the sound of our voice. Here in Franklin County, parts of St. Charles County, other areas now, thanks to Brad, State Senator Ben Brown is up for re-election in 2026. And I'll tell you what the Missouri Times says about his chances for re-election. The Missouri Times folks rate that race safe Republican. And here's what they say. Senator Brown is totally protected on his right flank and very popular in Franklin County. He has earned a great reputation working with his colleagues, and the chairman of the Economic Development Committee will cruise to re-election. One of their proof points here is the amount of cash that Senator Ben Brown has on hand. He's raised $196,000, so let's call it $200K. He's raised $200K this cycle, and he's still got half of that on hand. He's sitting on $100,000 in the bank. Moreover, his specialized candidate PAC. You got to have a PAC these days. You got to have a gimmick. You got to have a PAC. The BB Freedom Fund is sitting on a cool $87,000. So Ben Brown, a year and a few months ahead of a primary, is sitting on nearly $200,000. This seat will remain safely Republican. People will probably file against Ben Brown, but I don't think any serious candidates are going to take Ben Brown on. So it looks like, Brad, State Senator Ben Brown is more than likely to cruise to re-election in 2026.
How does John feel about that?
Well, I'm not a Franklin County voter, Brad.
Well, you're a city resident of the state of Missouri. He's a senator. I mean, he may not be your senator. He is
not my state senator. I do have plenty of opinions on things in my area, Brad. I voted yesterday out here in Chesterfield. So, I have local elections, but Ben Brown is not my state senator, and I think the good folks of Franklin County will weigh in on Ben Brown.
Hold it. You voted yesterday? I thought it was...
I did. I voted early.
Oh, okay. I was going to say we had the discussion where how come Missouri, how come other states, like the national newscast is we have, elections in other states, and you described to me, which apparently they don't have. Now, here's the interesting thing. Explain that again. Why wasn't election day in Missouri yesterday?
Because elections in Missouri are held the first Tuesday after the first Monday in whatever month it is.
Okay.
So if it's a special election, let's say if it's in March or if it's in April, first Tuesday after the first Monday. Same thing goes for August elections, and same thing goes for November elections. And in fact, yesterday, I linked to the story today, John Lamping was on the Marc Cox morning show yesterday, and Marc Cox said, hey, why can't we put an abortion measure on the November ballot? And John Lamping pointed out, hey, in Missouri, you can only vote on constitutional amendments in an election year. So you can only vote in 2026. And now nitpickers and exceptions guy will come in and say, oh, but March and April are election years too. Sure. But anyway, on even years like 2026, you have to wait till 2026 if the state is going to vote for a statewide constitutional amendment. And speaking of special elections, yesterday, before the elections took place in Wisconsin and in Florida, Gregg Keller, friend of the show, was on the Elijah Haahr show down in Springfield and talked a little bit about his expectations for those national races. Gregg also talked about the genius of Donald Trump and getting Democrats distracted by things like, a third presidential term or making Canada the 51st state. Gregg also talked about the collapse of Tashara Jones' campaign. And I suggest folks check that out too. The Marc Cox link and the Elijah Haahr link are up today. We don't have a link to yesterday's Brad and John show. We don't have that up on my website today. But you can listen to the Marc Cox morning show and Elijah Haahr show today through my website.
Why is it that we promote all these other radio people and they wouldn't give us the time of day?
Because, Brad, our behavior is not based on how they treat you. And first of all, I don't think those folks probably know that they know that you have a radio show. Elijah does, because I linked to it. But yeah, we don't treat other people the way they treat us. Brad, I can't speak for you. I am a thermostat. I am not a thermometer. So when Brad gets hot or Brad gets mad or Brad goes on his daily Tracy Ellis rant, it doesn't affect me. I set my own temperature, my own behavior. On this show, we might say positive things about other radio stations that don't even know that Brad Hildebrand is still in radio. It doesn't affect how we're going to treat them.
Boy, John, you're full of compliments this morning. I sure appreciate that. Okay, we need to take a break.
Thank you, Brad. And you'll be able to hear today's show, Friday?
Friday in May. The matter of fact,
okay, there we go. If we're still on the air, we'll hear it Friday in May.
Matter of fact, I'll be able to say something that I always love to say on the radio. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday.